Yeah, I've got personal goal, and it's important to have a plan, and that's what But you need to have that plan, but you need to have flexibility along the way because things do happen, things change. You need to be okay with that. But that will be my tip for everybody: is like have at least some semblance of a plan. Don't just shoot from the hip.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast. I am Jason Muth, and we're here with an amazing guest, Saad Munir from Torii Homes here in the Boston area, right?
Correct.
Excellent. And Rory Gill, our attorney, broker with Next Home Titletown Real Estate and Urban Village Legal, also here in Boston. Hello,
hey, Jason.
Rory. People hear from us all the time. Let's get to Saad because we've invited him on the podcast and he has such amazing information to say. We met Saad a couple weeks ago at a networking group that we're hosting called Network to Grow Your Net Worth. And we appreciate your coming to the event. And, I think I talked to you for quite some time and so did Rory. And we're like, I got to get this guy on the podcast because he knows a lot about the local market. He's a real estate investor himself. And I think he's got a lot of great information to share. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Let's introduce you as what you do, with your gig, and we'll talk a little bit about that company, and then we'll talk a little bit about, some of the investing that you do on the side as you're building your own portfolio and wealth management and whatnot. So you work for Torii Homes. You're the director of sales and a licensed real estate agent for, it's Torii, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. So tell us about Torii Homes and your work there.
Yeah, so Torii was a company started 4 years ago. In fact, the CEO is somebody I worked at another startup at. He was one of the lead engineers. I was one of the lead sales guys. We always had that joint passion or I guess similar passion when it comes to real estate. So we had stayed in touch. He started the company. I, prior to joining Torii, have no professional real estate experience. But he, again, he knew that, not trying to toot my own horn here, but that
toot away. You're on the podcast. You're the guest.
that I'm a decent sales guy. So he was like, why don't we stay in touch? There could be an opportunity, especially if you want to get into real estate. And he's the one that convinced me to get my license. He's the one that kind of obviously brought me on to the Torii team. What kind of drew me to Torii was the whole focus on reinventing home buying. And specifically, I say home buying because Torii really is geared towards the home buyer. Selling, we do a little bit of that, but really the buying experience is so painful right now. It's so complicated. It's so cumbersome. It can be so confusing, especially for first-time home buyers. So what we're trying to do, and our new tagline is we're a home for all things home. So anything related to home buying, anything related to the home buying experience, we're trying to streamline that as much as possible. Number one, we have vendors lined up already. You don't have to find your own inspector. You don't have to find your own lender. You don't have to find your own attorney. We have those things lined up. And the bonus is you use them, which it makes sense for you to do. But if you use them, we help cover a decent chunk of your closing costs. So that's the value add for the client. But yeah, we're trying to make the home buying experience easier than ever. And that's really kind of, our focus in the short term and in the long term, but we're trying to add other things as well, like Torii movers, Torii loans one day, even things like Torii concierge. So not just home buying, but what's home owning going to be like, right? Making home owning easier by giving you access to plumbers, electricians, HVAC professionals, that can help you, be a better homeowner, essentially. So that's a little bit about Torii.
It's like working with a buyer for the first time and then having a long time relationship with them while they're owning the home as well.
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
the goal.
So yeah, we're trying to build a relationship. I mean, usually, obviously, home buying is such a transactional thing, right? Like one time, and then you kind of move on, and maybe one other time in their life, you're doing another transaction with them. We're trying to make build a relationship out of it, and that's why Torii Concierge and some of these other things are part of the process.
Do you know the derivation of the name? Like, where did Torii come from? Do you know?
Yeah, so Torii is the Japanese symbol for. That's a good. I've been to Japan too, and I learned this, but it's something about like freedom or something about like like entering a new barrier into like a new life, right? And that's symbolic to home buying, right? So that's where the name comes from. And James, our CEO, he's been to Japan, and obviously the Torii, like the symbol of a Torii kind of looks like a home, right?
Okay.
So our symbol is a little bit kind of just like that. So kind of just made sense.
Wow, that's pretty clever. Well, Rory rhymes with Torii. So now I'm going to get those tongue twisted a little bit, right? You said you had a tech background.
Mm-hmm.
So did you work in technology before real estate?
Yeah. So out of college, I was a financial advisor for several years. Learned a lot of what I know now from those 4 years. But after that, I always wanted to get into the startup ecosystem, specifically like the Boston tech scene. So from 2010 to about 2020, like I was in small tech startups, no company bigger than like 80 people. I mean, the smallest company I worked at was 4 people. So a little bit all over the map in different types of software / media companies, but all in the technology space. So yeah, that was the last 10 years prior to me joining Torii.
Tell me about the people that you work with. Like, what's the relationship with like the real estate world? Like, are you dealing with a lot of people that are kind of coming and going in Boston, people that aren't thinking toward their future or building wealth or anything? They're looking for that big cash out, right? They're looking to get a huge influx of money from angel investors or to, be sold to Google.
Right.
So along the way until that happens, like what's people's mindset usually?
I mean, that's long-term, right? And yes, you need to have that in mind. You need to have that context that like, look, we're doing this to become $100 billion company one day, right? We're doing this to surpass the Zillows and Redfins of the world and we want to be the 800-pound gorilla, right? But there's so much stuff that needs to be done between now and that point. So the people that work at Torii and the people that, I interact with on a daily basis, like they need to be extremely driven and they need to be very internally motivated, right? Because there's nobody like even James or, our CRO, Mike, like he doesn't have time to breathe down everybody's neck. There's no time for micromanagement, right? So we need people who are go-getters, who are internally motivated, who have their own personal goals, because that's the only way we can succeed. And if you have multiple people who have that same kind of mindset, with the context of what we're trying to do in the long term, that makes for like a good recipe to build something big. So
let's talk a little bit about real estate technology. Since Torii, has that as part of the backbone, and I know Rory, part of why you picked up the Next Home brand is because of how they leaned into technology. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, why I love talking to Saad, ton of respect. And I love engaging with other brokerages that are, really innovative in this space. And, I think his past comment touched on 2 things. I mean, I think brokerage to be successful, as the whole industry keeps changing very much year to year, is you have to have really good, high quality systems that make life easier for people and your clients. But you also have to have the right people in place. No amount of technology is going to replace good agents and people who are hungry and that are true go-getters. But it's going to make their work that much easier, and it's going to deliver better product to the end user. And nobody really knows for sure where the real estate industry is going to go. Maybe Saad has a good handle on it, but the real estate agents say fit in with everything, and what systems are going to be used to improve the whole customer experience in a field that is not the most respected among its own consumers.
Was there a question in there?
No, I kind of danced around something in there, and I'm just like, I kind of like the systems that the innovative brokerages are bringing. So I just wanted to know, where does Saad think that the industry is going to go? What are the clients looking for, and how do real estate brokerages have to adapt to the modern consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very relevant question to something that we're still trying to figure out, is how do buyers or potential buyers want to be reached out to? How do they want to be talked to? What kind of language should we be using? We're still trying to figure that out. There's no secret sauce, and that's why it's there's going to be a lot of trial and error. But when we talk about millennials, we talk about first-time buyers, we talk about even even folks that will be buying 3, 4, 5 years from now, they don't want to answer the phone. That's something that's very real, right? Even we had this conversation as a leadership team just the other day, is if one of us gets a phone call from somebody, again, I'm an agent, so that's different. If I get a phone call from a number I don't know, I'm picking that up. But if somebody else on the leadership team or somebody else on our team gets a call from a number they don't know, they're not picking it up, right? So we're trying to find out what's the best way to reach out. Gone are the days of all right, the lead comes in, now call them right away, and with the assumption that they're ready to buy right now, right? Mm-hmm. That's not fair, right? That's not fair. And honestly, in most cases, it's just not true. There's a lot of people that are downloading apps that are downloading, because again, talking about real estate tech, we have our own app, and there's a lot of cool, neat features on there. But just like people peruse through properties on Zillow and Redfin, they're doing the same thing on Torii, right? So it's unfair for us to assume that they're ready to buy now, but the key is to have a good nurturing process, right? So to make sure that they keep Torii top of mind, that they understand that we're just giving them value right now. We're not asking them for a single thing. What we're just going to do is give them value, make sure that they feel heard, that they feel listened to. But so when the time is right, they're going to be like, I want to talk to these guys. Right, because so that's something that's really kind of near and dear to us. It's much more. It's very different than how Rory, you alluded to this. It's very different than how traditional brokerages not only operate today, but they've operated for decades like that. Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, and that involves a pretty large rethinking of the whole business. It's not just a transactional process anymore. Maybe it was before my memory, but even in the 10 years I've been doing it, this is not a transactional business. This is a relationship business. So it's not about, the real estate's one part of it, but it's about maintaining good relationships with a whole bunch of people for a long period of time and on terms that they want. And, I'd be interested to hear, how you can communicate with your clients, because you're right. People today, they don't want to answer their phones. They don't want to be interrupted, but they also expect you to be, available pretty rapidly when they do decide to need you. And that creates a whole bunch of challenges for communicating. So how do you communicate with your relationships over time?
Yeah, so the way we do it right now, I mean, we just like we're a tech company, we leverage technology, right? So text messaging is one thing, but we use email sequences. We have content that we're spewing out on a fairly regular basis. Again, as I mentioned earlier, as we all know, home buying is complicated. Sometimes people just want information. Sometimes they don't even know what information to ask for, though. Right. So what we're trying to do is based off, for example, when somebody signs up for the app, there's a few key bits of information that we ask for, right? We ask for location that they're potentially looking in, we ask for budget, and we ask for their status. Are they actively looking? Is it 6 months out, a year out, or more? Based on that, what we can do is start to personalize, right? We can start to personalize the messaging to them. So that starts to build trust. The more personalized you are, even if it sometimes means you're a little creepy, right? Because you've like looked at their LinkedIn page, checked out their Instagram, see what they're posting on Twitter. And sometimes, again, it's hard to get that information, but it shows that you're doing your research and that you're tailoring your messaging to that particular individual. And this day and age, consumers, that's what they're looking for, is they're okay with that hyper targeting. And that's I know the older generations, they're not, but the newer generations absolutely are. So, and that's why we're kind of like using that approach of like give before we ask for anything. And that giving involves incorporating that extra level of personalization that is that's not common in real estate.
I mean, I think the challenge, and you seem to be hitting on it, is how to answer their questions when they don't even know what their question is in the first place. Anticipating from their behavior or what they're doing, what is the best information for them, instead of just sicking everybody with every bit of information or article that you could possibly conjure up.
Right. So one of the things that one piece of collateral that we put together is like a process map. Right. So basically, like, day one, when you're ready, not right now, like whenever that time is right, day one, this is what it looks like. And then, from there, here are all the different steps. It's kind of like a Candyland board, right? Like nice. So it's like a Candyland type of board where it shows you like along each step of the way, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. So it's like clear as day. It's kind of fun, but at the same time, it's not asking for anything either. It's just like informational. So most people they just don't even know what, like that's something that they can reference. Doesn't matter who they're using as a brokerage, right? Different things obviously will help make those processes easier along the way, but it's something that they can certainly reference no matter who they choose to use to go with.
Let's talk a little bit about the other side of the transaction as well, because since you're working a lot with buyers, my hunch is a lot of buyers, at least first-time buyers these days, were probably born 1980 and afterward, right? Maybe mid 80s, 85 or so. Yep. If you're born in 85, you're 36 years old today, recording this in 2021. And Boston might trail some other markets. I mean, like people tend to get married a little bit later here, have kids a little bit later here than in places in the Midwest and the South. So every market's probably a little bit different, but it's probably fair to say that the cohort of people that are looking to buy homes the first time are probably under 40, if not under 35 in many situations.
Right.
But you're often dealing with owners of properties who are older, right? They're downsizing or they're moving on or they're moving up. Perhaps they have a relationship with a brokerage that's a legacy brokerage. And I'm not disparaging anybody or trying to be ageist or anything, but there are very tech forward brokerages and there are people that have been doing this for decades who are very kind of stuck in their ways of doing it very differently. Like how did the two of you navigate systems and situations where you might be working in a very tech forward environment with your buyer, but the other side of the transaction might be you need to fax things over to them, or if they're very different from how you expect them to want to be communicated with?
I'll certainly jump in first. Yeah. So I think, first of all, we'd like to handle both sides, right? Like, that's the ideal situation, is that we're helping them buy, but also sell their current property. But that's why you just need to have a good team, and we don't pretend to know how to do everything ourselves. So that's why, for example, I personally, in my transactions, have used one particular attorney for every single transaction that I've done since I've been at Torii. And I trust them. I know that no matter who I bring in as a client, whoever I'm working with, however complicated it is, they'll help me figure it out. If I don't know the answer, then they'll respond in the appropriate way and make sure that the client feels comfortable as well. Similarly, it's almost equal. It's probably equally as important for that to be the case on the lender side. So I think team really matters. And if you have a team that's flexible, if you have a team that's technologically savvy, but also has experience, right, with some of these more old school, potentially like second, third, fourth time buyers, because we get some of those as well. I think that's really important, and it gives the client like ease, and it gives them, and it builds credibility as well. So that would be kind of like long-winded way of saying that team, I think, is really important.
And Rory, what do you think?
I mean, I think as part of the being technologically advanced is being able to communicate with different people in different ways and know who is who. If you try to generalize about younger clients, younger buyers and sellers, they also have within that cohort a lot of different communication styles that you need to account for. And some of the, the legacy communication styles, when we're talking about older people, but not exclusively so, that's just another communication style that your systems need to be able to adapt for. And when you're talking about other outside vendors, we may develop the best internal system and we think it's great. And we hope that everybody who interacts with us from vendors to clients is going to use it. That's not always true. Sometimes those third-party providers have their own systems that we have to now adopt and navigate as well. Or they might, they might require everything in the mail. So you need to have, a bit of flexibility built into your own systems.
I mean, I do love DocuSign. But it's a pain in the butt. I mean, Rory and I just did a closing last week on an investment that we just bought, and I thought it was a pain that I had to go drive 50 miles away to go sign something, frankly. But I had to, right? The two of us did.
Mm-hmm. Right. But I mean, I've encountered many people, I'm sure Saad had as well, where they can't figure out DocuSign and you have to find some other solution to get little things done. I think that's a minority of people these days, but there are people out there. One of my sellers in an estate sale, one of the adult sellers didn't have an email address. Just by not having an email address, that kind of negates all of the online systems that we have, including DocuSign, and we have to come up with an alternative way to get everything else done.
At the risk of sounding like we're exclusive, which we're not, in order to even sign up for Torii, you need to have an email, right? Yeah. Where we are a technology company first before a real estate company, and in order to use our app, which we want everybody to be using our app, right? And if they're going to be searching for properties and things like that, they need to have an email. So that baseline kind of needs to be there in order for them to effectively work with us. And my hunch is, specifically for Torii, if that's an issue early on, they're not going to work with us anyway. Yeah. So that's just something that we've realized as an organization, and frankly, we're okay with that.
No, and that's very smart of you. I mean, if somebody can't use your systems, then all the time and the energy and the money that you've put into building and perfecting those is lost on the person, and you're probably not the best fit for them.
Right, and thinking long term, like, are we going to get referrals from them? Probably not, right? Because the experience is going to be not geared towards them. It probably makes sense for them to work with one of the older shops, and that's totally fine with us. But yeah, so I think that's something that's really important, is like, know who your niche is, right? Know who's going to work with you, who's not going to work with you, and live with the results. So
I think that's good advice for any business, though. I mean, not just technology and real estate. Vetting sales leads or any kind of potential business, and not just taking the high quality stuff, but realizing that there is a limit as to how much, somebody can take on, like at least in the sales organization, like the one that I work for. There's some basic stuff that people aren't going to want to buy advertising from us if they don't fit a couple criteria. And then it just becomes a lot of conversations and a lot of time. The opportunity cost that could be used working with other clients, really kicks in. And next thing you know, you're spinning your wheels or dealing with somebody that's a low value, opportunity for you. I see it all the time with our short-term rentals where, I don't mean to be arrogant about this or anything, but, knock wood, we've had a pretty good couple of years of renting our places. I think we do a pretty good job with them. Like we have good rentals. We communicate really well. We're honest with everything. The prices are fair. But sometimes you'll get people that will inquire and ask 75 million different questions and ask for discounts and ask for this. And you could tell that like, it'll just be easier to rent to somebody else, and it'll rent to somebody else because it always does. So and that same person is going to have a better experience if they go elsewhere. It's just not a good match all the time. Yeah. I mean, like Rory, you and I joke about it all the time about the tech that we put in our homes, that we try to make it as idiot proof as possible. Like we have multi-page document that should answer all the questions you have about passwords and how to work this and how to work that. But like, we have a guest right now who, can't figure out like the door to get inside, right? Like a couple days ago, I was very clear, like touch the pad a couple times, it'll light up, and then you put the code in. Well, a couple, hours later, I get a message back, oh, the code didn't work. I'm thinking, well, did the pad light up? Yes, it did. Okay, I'm thinking, I know the code works, but okay, here, try this one. That didn't work either. Okay, try this one. It's the one that our housekeeper uses. And she was there yesterday, right? I had to use the hard key. Okay, and then finally you figure out, nope, they just weren't pushing hard enough. And I'm like, and the Nest thermostat was thing number 2. And then the Apple TV was thing number 3. They were all with the same people, but it's always the same people, right? And it's always not understanding like some facets of technology. I can't figure out the Nest. You turn the thing or you push into it. You guys probably experience the same exact thing, like, with a lot of your clients, but I digress. So let's talk a little bit about your personal investments and kind of your mindset toward real estate, building wealth in real estate, because what I thought was interesting about you is that you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? And you have your own mindset toward building a portfolio if you've already built a portfolio. So, if you want to share to whatever extent that you are comfortable sharing about, some of your property, that would be great to hear.
Sure. Yeah. So, I got interested in real estate, honestly, because, I mentioned earlier I was a financial advisor for a few years. So spoke with a lot of clients who had property, all that kind of stuff. And I knew that, and then, early on, I started investing in mutual funds and stocks and all that kind of stuff, right? ETFs. Started to build my investment portfolio from that end, and then bought my first property in 2013, condo in East Cambridge in 2017. Used the equity in that particular property to buy our second, condo in East Cambridge, and then a couple of years later we bought this place, and again using the equity. So the investments that we've built up over the last 15 years or so. So it was a combination of things, but that's you mentioned it. Like you don't build wealth just by making money, but just by getting a salary, right? Like you gotta do some smart things with that money once you get it. It's not just about saving; it's about investing, and that's why we started it doing that way. My wife and I were always on the same page in terms of location and things like that. She trusted me to kind of make the right decisions and what have you. Obviously, there've been some. It's never 100%. You're never going to get an A+ for every move you make, but there's some risk that comes with the game. But you've got to be okay with it, right? And we are. So that's what's led us to where we are today, which thankfully, we have a beautiful home in East Cambridge. We plan on staying here for the next 10 years or so. Yeah. And the plan is, again, to use the equity to buy more property later on, which in my view, I know there's a lot of people I talked to at that event that you guys held. A lot of the focus is on cash flow, right? Yeah. It's like buy a property for cash flow. And that's of course important. Like, if you're not cash flowing on a property, that's a problem. But, right. But in my view, in my view, when you start thinking about appreciation, that's chess versus the cash flow piece being checkers, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where my head's at when it comes to investing in general, and particularly investing in real estate.
I think we've had a fortunate run up here in the greater Boston area in, at least the past. You bought in 2013. My first place here was in 2003 in South Boston. So we've been fortunate to see a couple different run-ups here. Yeah. And, a lot of people have experienced that over the past year in markets across the country. Since COVID hit, everything shut down for a couple months and everything just went on fire, over the past, 12, 15 months. So there is a lot of equity that people are sitting on. And, I think that equity is important. I don't think that any of the investments we've made, the goal was that this is going to just, continue to grow and grow and grow, but that's a nice side effect. And in some situations, it really surprised me as to how much it did grow. Right. And the cash flow side of it as well is good to cover your bills. Some people need to make money on the cash flow, right? But some people want to cover their bills and rely on the equity appreciation. And I think that the massive home run is when it all kind of hits. Like you got appreciation, you have cash flow, you have the tax benefits. and you happen to be just in a good area,
Right.
which Cambridge is. I mean, like Cambridge has just been consistently hot for quite some time. Were you able to keep your other two places along the way? Like, do you rent those out, or did you just keep moving your money?
Yeah, so we have those two other places. They're being rented out.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. So you got all facets of it: cash flow and tax benefits, depreciation.
I mean, like you said,
Appreciation.
that's the home run, right? Like,
Yeah.
but it requires. I mean, you guys know this, but for the audience, like, it requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires dealing with some of the bumps and bruises along the way.
Mhm.
You might have a pain in the butt tenant,
Mhm.
right? Like, but that's okay. Like, as long as you can deal with it and deal with it the right way, and make sure you're doing the right stuff from a tax perspective, like you said, right? So, like, as long as you can put those pieces together, and maybe not all right away, but, like, eventually you're building up to it. That's how people get wealthy. Like, like, they don't get wealthy overnight.
Right.
That just doesn't happen. You hear about, like, these overnight successes. The problem is there's no overnight success. like,
Right.
like, people have busted their butts to get to that point, and I think that gets lost a lot, especially in this day of social media and what have you. Like, people really work hard to get there. So, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So that's kind of like, the mindset that we've had, more of like a growth mindset, long term, and hopefully we can retire by the time we're 45. Like, that's kind of the goal of it, right? So
that's a great goal to have. I mean, like, financial, the FIRE movement is big and in full effect. I don't know if you follow the financial independence stuff, but yeah, that wasn't when I was in my early 20s. Like, that wasn't really anything that you could read about. So, like, I started reading about that, just a couple of years ago, and I'm like, God, man, I wish I was like, 15 years ago, where I had a plan for FIRE when I'm the age where I am right now. Instead, it's a little bit different. And people that are a little bit younger, are you in your 30s right now? Or
yeah, I'm 25.
Yeah. So you're in your 30s. You have that 10-year window right now, which is, it's great. Check those. And, part of it should be pretty boring, right? I mean, in wealth building should be boring. Like, if you're throwing money into the stock market and you have somebody watching it for you, it should be boring. You shouldn't be, day trading is probably not the way to build long-term wealth, right? I mean, you're a financial guy, like, this more than me. Like,
not, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if anybody who follows my Instagram knows, I post a lot, not just about real estate, but, like, about stock market stuff and, like, personal finance and what have you. And, that whole craze with, like, GameStop and, like, those stocks and whatnot. Like, yeah, there were a few people who made a lot of money, but what percentage of the total population that invested in that stuff, like, made up that group? Very small. There was a lot of people who lost their shirts, doing that. Because the fact of the matter is, like, that stuff is not a way to build wealth, like, sustainably. Right. The sustainable way to do it is, again, make some decisions, do your research, like, invest your money wisely, get some help, and then, like, be disciplined and be consistent. That's another thing. You just have to be consistent. It's not just like you invest once and just let it be. Like, you've got to keep doing it. That's why dollar cost averaging is a tried and true strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it will always be something that will work. But not everybody wants that overnight, like, win, and that's just not realistic. So.
Right. I mean, it's a sports analogy is blocking and tackling, right? It's boring. Right. You want that play down the field, but, like, blocking and tackling, if you can't master that stuff, you're not going to win the game. And, the dollar cost averaging and buying index funds and, buy and hold real estate, like, it's boring stuff, but it works. Right.
Exactly. It works. You'll thank yourself, like, 5-10 years later. But that's better than, like, 6 months later being like, damn, I shouldn't have done that. Or I should have done that. So yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast and you're in your 20s or you're in your 30s, like, take advantage of these strategies right now. Time is on your side. Compounding interest is on your side. Like, it's all the cliche stuff that everybody talks about, but it's completely true. I could say it 10 years older than you. Like, that it's true. You see it right now. And people in the 20s are saying, geez, I wonder if this stuff is true. It's all true. It's all true. Right.
100% true. Yeah. It's just it's just not hot, right? It's not the sexy thing that everybody wants to talk about, but it works. You ask any of these, like, big time financial pundits, you look at, Buffett is probably, like, an unfair example, but like any of these guys, like they've done it the boring way. They have not done it. It has been exciting, but they've started businesses and stuff like that. They took some like calculated risks. That's a way to build wealth too. But the tried and true way is just to invest and invest regularly, and you know, don't bank on like stonks. That's not the way to do it. So.
You know, as we head toward our final wrap up questions and whatnot, like I think that, you know, what you're getting at right here is similar to the strategy that at least I've employed and that we've employed, Rory and I have. You know, and we'll talk to all different types of investors. Like people want to have 400 doors is what they'll say. You listen to the podcast and they're buying 10 doors and 20 doors and, you know, they're buying all this other stuff like, you know, mobile home parks and you name it. Right. And that's great. If that works for them, that's great. Like, and I don't want to speak for you what your strategy is, but like the two things along the way have been a trail of kind of where you've lived and you've kept and you've rented. We didn't do quite that, but we do have an objective, at least I do, to do one purchase every year for 10 in a row. And, you know, we're kind of on the midpoint there, and, you know, we're there. Like there was one year that we didn't, but we made up for it by doing 2 or 3 deals in a couple of other years surrounding it. Like this year we just did 1, last year we did none, the previous year we did 3. So at the end of those 10 years, you know, stacking it all up, building your real estate stack, like now you have 10 properties or 10 years of things. And like, I don't need to have all the pieces. Like I just need to have enough to keep me happy. Right. So, you know, it sounds like you might have different vision for the next 10 years, which is what your goal is to retire at 45. But what you've done up until this point is a very similar calculated strategy.
Yes. And I, you know, I have personal goals for sure. In terms of like, you know, the value of my property portfolio, where I want / need that to be in, by the time we're 45. And obviously that incorporates like the other investment too, right? Like the stock market stuff and, you know, I mean, my wife works for Google, so she's got like, we have company stock that's fairly valuable as well. So like all that kind of, it's gotta, the context needs to be there for each piece. Like you can't look at just one of those pieces alone. So yeah, I've got personal goal, and it's important to have a plan. And that's what, you know, like, but you need to have that plan, but you need to have flexibility along the way, because things do happen, things change. You need to be okay with that. But that will be my tip for everybody is like, have at least some semblance of a plan. Don't just shoot from the hip, right? Like I think just simple exercises like writing stuff down and making sure that you and your partner, if you have one, like are on the same page in terms of that plan, and that you're doing the right things together, or at least like, you know, have an understanding with each other about what that plan is, and kind of tick things off and have regular check-ins. Like that stuff helps. So yeah, just like similar to your plan and how you're working towards it, like we're doing the same thing, and that's proven to be quite helpful.
Yeah. Excellent advice. That's going to be a good soundbite from this. So let's get into our final wrap up. We asked the same 3 questions of everyone that appears in the podcast, just to try to leave on a bit lighter of a note. Rory, do you want to do these? Do you want me to jump into them? I know that I haven't written down. You probably don't have them written down. So.
Well, I'll wing it here. So if you had to speak on something, anything for 30 minutes to an audience without any preparation, what would that topic be?
That topic would be basketball.
Yeah.
I could talk about basketball. I could talk about the Celtics, the NBA. Easily my favorite league, my favorite professional league. It's definitely my favorite sport, both to play and to watch. I can't say I'm a basketball like history buff, but like I just love the game, you know. So it's fun to play it, talk about it, like and not just about the NBA itself, but even about like playing basketball, like different moves and strategies and defense, offense. So that would be the thing I could talk about forever.
Did you play in school, like high school or college or recreation?
I didn't play for the high school or for college, but I played through high school and college. Like I played in a church league in high school. I played in intramural in college, and even like through COVID and all that stuff, I kept playing like every week, every couple of weeks. I mean, a couple of kind of like loose, you know, like time boxed 5-on-5 sessions every week. So yeah, I mean, it's a big part of my life. So I hate running. Yeah. If I could play a competitive sport, that would be it. To get
running's It's the worst. Yeah. But I mean, you're running a lot in basketball. I mean, up and down the court, unless you're playing like half court and you can just kind of have outlet passes and that kind of thing.
So that's what I mean, right? Like, but in basketball, you're not really thinking about running. It's that
Right.
competition part of you, that competition part of your brain kind of, it creeps in. Whereas while you're running, I mean, you're just on a treadmill or outside, and I just can't do that.
My very first championship in life in sports was in basketball, and I'm
Nice.
not a basketball player. It was the CYO league back in like, I don't even know, grade 5th, 6th, or 7th grade or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was always a baseball guy, and Rory and I play on the same softball team, and I've played flag football for many years, and we've had a lot of success in our adult life in recreational sports. But like, that was the one championship I ever had, like leading up until 10 years ago playing softball. Was
Nice,
basketball.
huh? Awesome.
More follow up. Are you an NBA Top Shot guy or not really?
Not really.
Not
No.
really. Okay.
Yeah.
I have this strange obsession with NBA Top Shot, and I don't watch much basketball, but I
Okay.
do have a lot of those NFTs. I don't know why. I just do.
Well, I mean, it's hot right now, so
It's hot. It's
Yeah,
hot.
yeah,
It's
that's
hot.
awesome. Good for you. I have a few friends who are big into that. So
Are they? Okay. They probably have better collections than I do. 2, Rory, do you know the second one, or should I go into number 2?
I'll let you do the
wrap-up?
second one.
All right. Tell us something that happened early on in your life or career that impacted the way that you work today.
That's easy. So my father's a physician. My mom, homemaker, right? So, and they moved to this country with me when I was like a year old. So even though I wasn't born in this country, like I was raised here, and like when I went to college, the expectation was, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. The expectation was that I was going to be a doctor, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And I remember after my first semester of college, not even midway through my first semester of college, after like, Bio 101 and Chem 101, I'm like, this sucks. I'm like, I remember, because I was like, Mom, Dad, I got to talk to you. Like, right. And then I was sitting in the back seat of our SUV. I could see my dad's eyes through like the rear view mirror. And I told him, I'm like, guys, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to be a doctor. And I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad saying, like, do you want to drop out of school? Like as if like
It was a binary choice, right?
Yeah.
It was this or that, doctor or
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly. He's like, doctor, or you're a complete like deadbeat,
Failure.
right? I mean, my dad and I still talk about it to this day, but like that was actually like a really motivating moment to me. Like it was like I'm gonna prove my dad wrong. Like I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be able to take care of my family as well, if not better than my dad did for us. And I'm just going to prove him wrong. So it was like a big motivating thing for me. And at that point, I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. I had no idea what my career trajectory was going to be. I had to figure it all out on my own. So yeah, that would be the moment that I would point to.
So I too am a reformed pre-med. I actually went as far as to take the MCAT.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh yeah. I was a biology major, and I didn't have the family pressure wasn't really there. My parents aren't doctors or anything, but I had this expectation of just being good at math and science, and I kind of had this set up in my head that this is what I wanted to do in high school and then through college. And isn't it like cathartic the moment that you finally like let it out, saying like, I don't want to do this, and you admit it and you say it and then you move on? Like, yeah,
I mean, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I still remember like I just felt better. I felt so good. I was like felt free. Like the world was in front of me, but I don't know what it's going to be, but it's out there and I'll figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, we're asked to define ourselves so early also, like pick a major when you get to college and that's what you're going to study there. And that's what you're going to do their whole life. But like, nobody really goes to college for real estate. So people that kind of find their way into real estate or tangential fields or connected to real estate investing, like they all kind of figure it out either during college or afterward or far afterward. And that's fine.
Yeah. I was an econ and psychology major. Had no idea what the hell I was going to do with that combo of majors, but went to this session where Ameriprise Financial was talking about being a financial advisor. I'm like, that kind of works, combination of like finance and psychology, like sales, right? So I was like, let's try that out. And I mean, that's been a big part of my foundation for my life today. So
That's a great lesson for people listening who are still in college. Like, if you don't want to go to med school, don't do it.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. Yeah.
And Rory, you could do number 3.
What content are you consuming these days? Podcast, TV shows, anything? What's your go-to content these days?
Besides the NBA.
Yeah, right. So I'm a big, I love Netflix's content. So like, in fact, like I watched Selling Sunset. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Selling Sunset, but I watched some of that for quite some time before I even joined Torii, and kind of like learned a lot about like little like bits and pieces of the real estate world. I love the shows that they have, like Stranger Things and Ozark. Like those are fantastic shows. I can't wait for the next seasons. So professionally, like Keeping Current Matters, I think they're awesome. They put a lot of good content out there. I think it's really interesting. One thing that I do, for anybody who follows me on Instagram, is I do these funny like real estate videos where I basically kind of lip sync a song and have it be parlayed into some sort of real estate message. And I get my ideas while listening to Pandora, free Pandora, I should say. I don't pay for it while I'm driving. So I because obviously I drive a lot as a real estate agent. So it's a great time for me to just kind of listen to a few things and get some more ideas for new content that I put on Instagram. So
fully admit, I haven't seen that. I have to, but you have to, what is your Instagram handle that everyone can follow you?
It's Saad Munir. So SAADMUN 1R. So the I is actually a 1.
Got it. All right. We'll check that out and see some of your lip syncing. And by the way, on Netflix, Rory and I just finished up Clickbait. Have you seen that yet?
I've heard really good things though.
Yeah. It was cool. They were like, every time you think you figure it out, there's another twist.
Nice. Awesome.
And what's the other, Rory, the real estate show that we're watching? The women that are doing the motel up in Canada?
I forget the name of it, but it's the motel transformation. It's basically for Airbnb people like us, it's fascinating because you're taking, instead of, one Airbnb at a time, you're buying a property with 24 motel rooms, which I see as Airbnb units, and they're making a go at it. But we're at the part where COVID hit, so I'm going to see how it works out for them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, watching any of these things that are based in, January, February 2020, like the story that's going to hit all these people just in a few more weeks.
Right.
And I think that show plays off of the popularity of Schitt's Creek, being a motel that, a quirky motel with quirky characters, and Instagram, because these two women have done a fantastic job with a previous property that they had called The June, which is somewhere up in Canada. And they did some other motel over and made it very Instagrammable. So they're just doing it again now.
Schitt's Creek is a fantastic show.
My God. Yes. We power watched the whole thing, and I think I need to watch the whole thing again. Yeah.
So good. I got somebody, I don't know, somebody my previous employer mentioned it, and I was like, let's try this out. And then like first episode, fine. But then I got my wife into it, and and I actually got to like season 4 or something, or however many I got to like the last season, and then she made me watch it from the beginning.
What's so fascinating about that show is how the characters started out as so unlikable, and then they just turned into just the most likable people for all their own different reasons. I mean, but that was the intention.
Really well done show. Really well done. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, we could chit chat forever, but let's put a pin in this, and we'll circle back with you in a couple months and see how things are going with your new place and anything else that you've been working on at Torii and elsewhere. But you already said where we could find you on Instagram, which is Saad Munir with a 1 instead of the I. How else can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you by email?
Yeah, email saad@toriihomes.com. So that's SAAD@TORII homes.com. So yeah, and then that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. I can also be reached by phone, 781-296-6446. So
perfect.
There you go.
Well, give them a call, give them a text. We'll drop your info in the show notes once we publish this. And Rory, where can people find you?
I'm easy enough to find at nexthometitletown.com or urbanvillagelegal.com.
Well, thank you again for appearing on the podcast, Saad. We really appreciate this. This has been an awesome discussion. I think so many lessons that people can take from the path with which you've taken. We talked about real estate technology, talked about kind of the boringness of the buy and hold strategy, but how it really works. and some really good fundamental principles that you guys are following. So, all the best with you and success. And, we'll look forward to checking in with you in the future also.
Yeah, sounds good. This was a lot of fun, guys. Hopefully
Cool.
we have a chance to do this again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we will see you at a meetup once we get the masks back
Yeah,
off.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So thanks again. This is Jason Muth from the Real Estate Law Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Counsel, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.